10, 9, ignition sequence starts. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Liftoff. Liftoff. 32 minutes past the hour. Liftoff on Apollo 11. Roger Tower.
Welcome to the Alien Probe Podcast. It is Monday, March 30th, 2026. I'm Doug. Joining me today is Homar, who has had some fascinating experiences. How you doing, Homar?
Great. Happy to be here.
Awesome. Glad you could make it. And tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, my name's Homar. I've been experiencing extraterrestrial contact for about 10 years now. I just caught my attention, and I've just been looking for them.
Did you have any interest in this before the contact started?
I did. I was open to it, but I wasn't necessarily out looking for it. I recognized that it was there. I had, an experience here or there, but I wasn't actively engaging.
Right. And that's interesting. So tell us a little. Where did this all start?
So I was living in Northern California in Chico, and I would go out at night and I would occasionally see some interesting things in the sky. And there was one instance where I was looking at an object in the sky with my telescope, and I remember looking at it. It was a glowing orb, and It looked as if it was, I remember it looked as if it was pixelated. The interior, there was like a green dot, and the more I looked at it, it made my head hurt, but it made the inside of my head hurt. And I remember at the time going into the house, getting my roommate to come out, like, hey, come look at this thing. And they indicated, it's making my head feel weird. And they didn't want to keep looking at it. They went back inside. I kept looking until my head hurt so much I couldn't keep looking.
Wow. And
I just went back inside. And I think since that point in time, I would continue looking for the UFOs. I would see them, and they eventually just started showing up.
That was 10 years ago?
Yeah, in 2015.
Wow. And what happened after that? What are some of the things that was in Chico?
Correct. Yeah, that was in Chico. So I would look for these UFOs, and I would essentially try to communicate with them telepathically. I would see them and be like, hey, what are you doing? And I didn't get any responses, but for some reason I felt compelled to try to get their attention.
Right.
And apparently I did.
Wow.
And so they started showing up, and I had a couple experiences that they presented as dreams, and so there was a part of me that wanted to brush them off or think of them, it's just a dream. And that continued for a period of time, and it just continued escalating.
And just more and more things happened.
Yeah.
Wow, that's interesting. So what else happened? What are some of the other things that... What do you do for a living? What is it what's your job?
So I work as an engineering geologist. I work in environmental remediation. And so we're the people that are outside cleaning up other people's messes.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, that could be interesting. Is there a lot of radiation out in this area?
No, there's not too much radiation. I know there's one place I've worked at, they had some radioactive material, but it was pretty minor. Nothing too wild.
Do you have to get in those suits and everything? And
not yet. Yeah.
The big yellow suits.
Yeah, not yet.
You're trained to do that, though? Is that?
I've had training in it, but we definitely don't do any of the, I guess maybe hazmat stuff.
Right.
It's more gasoline and diesel and so chemicals in soil and groundwater.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
That's interesting. So some of the other things that happened, I know you had mentioned that you were down in like SoCal somewhere, and you actually saw a ship.
Yeah. Well, it was an orb, and we were camped at Leo Carrillo, which is northwest of Malibu, and it was a glowing orange sphere. It would have been maybe about 4 feet, 3.5 to 4 feet in diameter.
Yeah.
Glowing orange, and we were there at night, and it caught our attention because it was pretty low to the ground. It was about 30 to 40 feet from the ground, and it was stationary. And I remember looking at it, and understanding that yes, it was a UFO, but that was all I could really, it was unidentified. And I kind of felt that it had its attention away from us, and then I felt it turn its attention towards us. It was a group of 4 of us looking at it. And I remember at that point I felt nervous, and didn't know what it was going to do. And then it kind of just felt like it turned its attention away from us, back to whatever it was doing. And we just went on with our lives. That would have been in between 2010 and 2015. So that was one of the earlier experiences I had. And there was another instance where I had seen a couple UFOs during that time. I was in Arizona. I saw again kind of like a glowing sphere or glowing orb. I'm not sure how big it was, but it was pretty low to the ground. It kind of almost expanded, contracted, and then just shot forward. I remember being with a couple other people at that time, and
have you communicated with any of the other people? And are you still in contact with these people?
Well, one of those people was actually my dad.
Oh, really?
Him and I were out in Arizona, and we both saw it, and he didn't know what to make of it either. And I'm glad that was something we got to see. He isn't really interested in UFOs or anything.
It's funny because people are like, "Oh, that's unusual." And I've got a friend who's in the military, and I said, he could care less about the phenomenon. I go, he's retired. He spent all his life in the military almost, and he doesn't care. He just literally doesn't care. He goes, "Yeah, I've seen some unusual stuff, but I just don't know what it is." You know what I mean? And it's kind of like it's either the people that really are interested in finding out, or people just don't care. And I know in the Malibu one, we were talking about and you had a picture of the offshore, the base. Was that you that had the base? Yeah,
and so there's old Google Earth images of a supposed base off the coast of California. And on Google Earth, on older Google Earth images, you can kind of see it. And at the time when I saw that glowing sphere, I didn't realize it was in that same area. Because at the time I wasn't really into the extraterrestrial or UFO community. I wasn't really spending time in it or reading up on it. It wasn't really on my radar. But I definitely saw more than one UFO in that area just because we would frequent it and we would see them flying around.
When did you pull that picture off the internet?
Recently. I just Googled it, and it was like a screenshot.
It still came up, because somebody told me that they'd blurred it out.
Yeah, and when you look on the actual Google Earth, I think they're blurred out. They have people go around and blur them, but I found a photo of it.
It was 3 years ago. Yeah, so you probably saw somebody that took a picture when you could still see it. I looked at it about 3 years ago, and you could see it.
Okay.
And I was showing everybody that would listen. I said, "Well, there's something going on here, And I'm surprised nobody's seen. I don't know if that water's that deep there. I mean, if you can see a structure from space, from the satellite, I don't know if it's thousands of feet deep, but it's probably pretty deep, but. I don't know why nobody sent anything down there to take a close look at it to see. Again, nobody, they want to do all these other things, but they can't send in your ROV down there to, unmanned sub and take pictures. I don't know. I wish they would. Maybe somebody will listen and do that. It'd be nice to see, what's going on down there. But there's also a story about how there's a submarine base in Nevada. Have you ever heard of that?
No, I haven't.
It's on Walker Lake, and there's a story that because I can't prove any of this, but the story is that they can have submarines are going all under the U.S. There's like passages, and the government is able to go from Walker Lake in Nevada and somehow go in, and it comes out in that general area where that structure is. I don't know if it has anything to do with this, but it's an interesting. So submarine base in Nevada, and it's real, and the lake isn't gigantic, and it's not very deep. So I'm kind of thinking, it's kind of like Clear Lake, where it's only like 30 feet deep or something like that. So I don't know how a submarine's gigantic. So I don't know, unless they have a small submarine or something. But it's a fascinating story.
Yeah.
I don't know if it, but I've heard about a lot of other UFO sightings in that area. So. It stands to reason that, something's going on there for sure. So what else you got? I know you had a lot of information.
Yeah.
We met at MUFON in Northern California, MUFON, and Homar told his story, and so I thought it'd be fascinating to bring you on and let's hear some more about some of your experiences.
Yeah, I can share more. So between 2010 and 2015, I think that was around the time of seeing that craft in Malibu, seeing a couple other things. But I remember having a dream, or they present often as dreams. So it's after falling asleep, and yeah, I saw an extraterrestrial that was wearing like a hood. It had like a cloak, this kind of like robe kind of thing, and I remember it was showing me this golden glowing book, and I remember kind of looking at this book and not really having any immediate thought, just kind of this individual showing me this book, but looking back on it, I was kind of able to, I guess, gain a little more information about what the intention of that meeting was. But I know at the time I didn't really think anything of it. I was like, yeah, it's a weird dream, I've never I've never had that kind of dream that seemed very real but also involved an extraterrestrial. And yeah, I remember telling some people, a friend or two. But again, because I wasn't really looking into the UFO phenomena at the time, it didn't occur to me that I should have looked further into it.
Right.
And so time went on, and
there's some people say lucid dreaming. That's that dream. It's so real. I know I have them when it's usually I'll wake up and I'll go do something, then I fall back asleep, and it usually happens then where I have this. It's so real. I mean, you can actually have a conversation. Usually in dreams you don't have really a conversation. I'll be able to have a conversation, and these just no like ETs or anything. It's just usually people I know or whatever. But they say there's some people say you're actually entering another dimension in your mind.
Okay.
I mean, I don't know if that's an explanation, but you're entering because some people think that these things are coming from another dimension. It's not. When you see them like zip and they disappear, they're actually going into that other dimension.
Yeah, I'm definitely of the belief that they are interdimensional.
Yeah.
Yeah. I can share more about that later. But time went on, and I remember becoming friends with someone, and he's now deceased, but whenever him and I would hang out, it felt like extraterrestrials would show up very frequently. Almost every time him and I would hang out, it felt like they would make their presence known, either through craft in the sky or being physically present in my backyard. And I would see them kind of peek around the back door. We would have the back door open to let the breeze in. And I would see them peek around the door. But what really caught my attention was that they appeared blurry. And it was as if my eyes couldn't focus on them. And my friend Jerry, he was totally unfazed by them. I remember he would refer to them as space brothers. And it was totally normal.
How old was Jerry at that
time? I think he died when he was about 75. I think
Yeah.
he was somewhere around there, so he was definitely older. I know he made it clear to me, it definitely had some interesting stories of being of age in the 60s and being able to have some benefit or positive experience because
Right.
of his age at the time. But yeah, for whatever reason, him and I would spend time together, and they would just appear very, very easily. And occasionally, they would either appear, I would see them, they're about 3.5 to 4 feet tall, and other times in the room, in like our physical room, I would see these almost like these flashes of light, and they varied in size from maybe like a point of light, like an LED, to something larger. And they would just kind of blink in and out. But it was around the same time that him and I would be hanging out, that we would, observe these things, and we would both see them. And it was around this time where I began experiencing more contact. And I have, for the viewers, I have my computer here to help me stay organized.
Yeah. So they didn't have hoods, though, the ones that you saw with Jerry?
They were just traditional, almost, no, they didn't even have like skin-tight suits or anything.
No, they were just there.
Yeah, they were
What
just
color
there.
were they?
Kind of gray.
Maybe the grays?
Yeah. Maybe like gray to peach color, kind of like a lighter gray. Not white, they weren't, but not totally dark gray. There's definitely some that are darker gray.
Yeah.
But yeah, time went on, and I remember having one experience while in that home, living in that house in Chico. I woke up and there was a room of all these people, and these people looked as if they were my parents or my family members or people I knew. And I remember kind of seeing all these things, all these beings shuffle into the room, almost like not single file, but they all came in and were standing there. And I remember recognizing and understanding that they weren't who they looked like they were.
Right.
And I felt like that's weird.
They weren't human.
Yeah, but they looked human, but they weren't. And I remember looking at them. If I looked at them straight on, they looked human. But if I walked around to the side of them, it appeared as if there was a 2-dimensional projection in front of them, and I could see the extraterrestrial behind it. And it was almost this 2-dimensional projection was floating right above them. And at this point, I got worried. I got kind of panicked. I remember grabbing one and asking, like, what's going on? Like, why, what's going on? Why am I here? At this point, I think I was alarmed. And I think it startled them as well. My ability, I think they weren't expecting me to either react or for me to be able to move. One or the other.
Right.
But at that point, my memory just goes black. Like they put me out. And and so these experiences just continued going on. And we would see craft in the sky in Chico. And
Jerry has seen he's experienced this his whole life.
From what I recall, it seemed like he was a long-term contactee, but he wasn't maybe that interested in it. I think he got kind of, recognized that it was happening and just continued living his life. He definitely wasn't a big...
he didn't have any need to find out what they were, or where they were from, or what they're doing.
Yeah, he didn't really feel drawn to it, but I remember he had a alien tattoo, and it was death in like the cloak and the scythe, but the face was an alien.
Oh,
like a green alien
on
his leg, on his calf. And he's like, yeah, because death's an alien, death's different. I was like, oh, like, interesting.
Well, did he think that did he have a thought about what happens when you die? Is that why he had the death thing, or is it like when you die, you go to another dimension, maybe?
Yeah, I think maybe what I understood was just that death is alien to us and that we don't experience it maybe frequently in a physical sense.
Yeah.
But yeah, he was definitely a spiritual person, but he definitely wasn't that interested in
Yeah, it's fascinating because I would have to know.
Yeah. I think, yeah.
Okay. And Omar's operating off a PowerPoint, so that's why Omar is looking at the computer because there's so much information.
Yeah, that was one of the issues in trying to compile kind of like 10 or 11 years of contact is how to keep it organized.
The presentation of MUFON was really good.
Yeah, because initially all this information, I was posting it on Alien Hub on an online forum.
Right.
And kind of just like a diary format of just sharing my experiences and whatever photos I had.
Is that the website, Alien Hub?
Yeah, Alien Hub. Yeah, Alien Hub. I was Alien Humanoid on there. And
what was your experience posting on there? Was the did people have a reaction to what you were posting?
Well, one thing I thought was interesting was it was a pretty small community, but at the time people were pretty dismissive of the idea that aliens were interdimensional. I remember in like 2015, 16, 17 kind of sharing these ideas like, yeah, they appear to come from different dimensions. And people in the group were dismissive to suspicious of the idea. I think there's still a strong nuts and bolts idea about extraterrestrials and UFOs. And I think that is involved. But I think it's interesting as time has gone on, more and more people are moving into that non-physical realm that there might be something else to it.
Well, because there's where are they going? It's like, where are they when we don't see them? You know what I mean? Are they under the ocean? Are they under the Antarctic? Are they? It doesn't seem like we're finding them anywhere. It makes the most sense that to me that they're interdimensional. We've found. You hear the stories about Roswell, and you hear the story, about how we captured or a crashed craft. But I believe the Roswell was real. Although I haven't put my hand on a ship or seen an actual ET, but I believe in the phenomena. Did this thing slip out of another dimension, or are they from the future and just that's another extra tempestrial is a term from that's us, how we evolved when we have thousands and thousands of years in the future, because how we looked like thousands of years ago and how we how we look today, and how are we gonna we continue to change. So maybe this thing, maybe this is us coming back to see, for whatever reason, a field trip or what research or something that they can do, and then they just pop back out. So it's hard to say. We don't know. We don't know.
Yeah, it's hard to say.
But yeah, interdimensional, I think, is definitely in there for an explanation. And it's interesting that they're dismissive about it. Those people usually have open minds. Most of the UFO people, as if MUFON, nobody ever says, "Oh, I don't think it's this or that." Usually, it's like we don't know if it's this or that. I find it hard to be dismissive about anything that I don't really know. So I'm with you. I think it's kind of as you see them appear, they've appeared through. Didn't you have some experiences where they appeared through walls and things? I don't know. I don't want to get you off the.
No, that's fine.
Off your timeline.
My understanding of this idea of interdimensionalism comes from the observations I was able to make. I wouldn't have thought that had I not seen them what appeared to be walk through walls,
right,
or move through physical objects. Because with that, being able to observe that, it made me think there must be another dimension, and I would at times have the opportunity to observe that space as well. People talk about remote viewing or astral projection, and so I would be able, or to a certain extent, they would train me or teach me how to perform that, and so I was able to see them in that space and understand. Well, that's essentially where my understanding comes from, is being able to observe them, and be like, oh, you're somewhere else, but you're here as well.
Right. Be in two places at once. That is cool.
So yeah, time went on. I just continued having experiences, and I tried to, document as much as I could. But one of the, maybe a pivotal moment or experience was in about, I think it would have been like 2016, 2017. I was living in Southern California, and I had been sharing more about my experiences online and connecting with people online. And I connected with someone who lived in San Diego. They lived I think, in the San Diego area. I lived in Los Angeles at the time. And this individual claimed to be a lifelong abductee who would help Greys during their experiments or abductions, that they were essentially kind of like an employee. And I remember thinking, like, that's interesting. Like, cool,
wow.
All right. And kind of just, kept living. But one evening I had an experience where I was in a large metallic room. There was a lot of people, about like 20 to 30 people, and there was a lot of, people were moving around. There was a lot of equipment, but there wasn't any extraterrestrials. But I understood that we were being tested on. And this individual who I had met online, who lived about 2.5 hours away from me, was in this experience. And they came up to me and said, "Oh, it's your turn. Your turn. You're going to be tested now." And I thought, like, okay, cool. Like, all right. I'm here. What am I going to do? And so they walked me over to a table, and I laid down. And they had this device that's similar to what they have at the dentist, that is like a light that you can move around. It's on like an arm, almost like a TV monitor arm. But it had some kind of metallic square, and it was placed above my head. So I'm laying down, and it's above my head. So it is perpendicular to the table I'm laying on. But it's not connected to the table. It's not connected to me. It's about, 6 to 12 inches off my head. And there's a person sitting at some kind of console or computer, and they tell me to push. And I don't really know what to think of that. I'm like, well, it's not touching my head, and so I kind of just assume and understand that this is a psychic test. And so my eyes are closed, and I imagine or visualize pushing against this thing on the top of my head. And my eyes are closed, but my vision, it's like almost like this white light turns on, and it gets brighter or darker, and there's maybe some feedback that I'm able to experience. But when pushing on this device, it felt like two magnets pushing against each other, or repelling each other. And I pushed, and then I think it was a woman at the computer console. She kind of seemed confused, kind of thought maybe something's broken, like, give me a second. And it kind of felt like she called her manager over or someone over and, made some comments. And they're like, we're going to do it again. But this time it felt like they applied more force. And so it felt like it was pushing harder on me. And they were just like, push again.
On your whole body, or
it was mostly just on my head.
Yeah,
it was mostly centered around the crown of my head. And I pushed again and again. I saw the white kind of lights brightening, and the woman who had come over, she made a comment like, "Your output is substantial," and I remember not really understanding what to make of it. And I was like, they sat me back up, and I was kind of just moved to the other side of the room. And at this point in time, I remember there was a woman in the room, and she was panicking. She was hysterical. I remember she was very worried and crying, and she grabbed some kind of object in defense. And I remember the object flew out of her hand, stuck to the wall, but then she got stuck to the wall, as if she the entire wall that she was closest to was magnetized. And there was two people around her, kind of trying to subdue her and figure out what's going on, or to calm her down. I remember that there was almost like a frosted glass. Behind the glass, I remember 3 individuals with large heads standing there. And couldn't see them, but I assume, it was somewhat of a two-way glass, or like a one-way mirror, kind of. I remember my memory kind of stops there. My memory comes back, and we're in some kind of large elevator. And I look around me, and the people around me, they looked very dazed. Their jaws were kind of open, hanging open, almost like drooling, but just very out of it. And I just have the sensation of us moving up through this elevator. The doors open, and we're somewhere in the desert.
Oh.
And I assume it's the Mojave, but whether it was Nevada, they border each other right there. But we come up somewhere in the desert, and so it appears that we were in an underground facility somewhere in that area. And then the memory kind of cuts off there. I end up back in my, back home. The next day, though, the person I recognized, I sent them a message. And I said, hey, where were you last night, or what happened? And they indicated that they remember being picked up. Grays showed up at their house saying, like, come on, let's go. They got picked up, and that they were in a large metallic room. And I thought it was interesting because I had been in a large metallic room, and I said, I saw you. And so after that experience, it gave me the feedback I needed to understand that what the experiences I was having were actually occurring. It wasn't just in my head. I wasn't just dreaming it. If it was a dream, I was able to have the same dream as someone else 2.5 hours away from me on the same night in the same environment. And so at that point in time, I began to take it more seriously.
Do you still keep in contact with the person that you saw?
No, I do not. I remember time went on, and they got married. They had a kid. But I remember talking to them, and they indicated that they had a dream of multiple extraterrestrials putting their hand on their belly when they were pregnant.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and so I actually looked for them recently, but they appear to no longer be active on social media.
Interesting.
And so, yeah, that would have been in 2016, 2017. And,
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, somebody brought up at the MUFON meeting, which I thought was interesting. Do you think you're being used somehow in some form of disclosure? I mean, is this, to get the word out that there's something out there, and
I think there's a lot of different forms of disclosure, and I think there's a lot of different programs, and so I've heard about it occurring, and I've also wondered, why me? Who am I going to tell her? The audience or the people I get to interact with is, pretty normal. I'm not a celebrity, or I'm not the president, or I'm not any of those people. And so we sometimes wonder why individuals are shown, destruction of Earth, and they have to do something about it. And it's what is this person to do about it? But I think the envelope is kind of pushed forward by multiple people in different directions, kind of just pushing that line forward.
Right.
And so I think we as individuals get to impact the people around us the most, really.
Yeah.
Kind of like a domino effect.
Interesting. So, were we at 2016?
Yeah, 2016, 2017. But I continue having these experiences, and at the time they were very stressful. They freaked me out. I didn't understand them. I would be in my bedroom trying to fall asleep, and an extraterrestrial or two would be standing there. And I'd be like, where'd you come from? How'd you get here? Why are you here? What do you want? And yeah, one thing that at this time, I remember they would sometimes show up and I wouldn't be able to see them, but I would feel a tapping on my forehead. It felt like something was literally tapping on my forehead, and I understood that I should be looking at them with my non-physical awareness. When you feel that, close your eyes and look around. And that was when I began being able to observe them, I guess, through non-physical awareness.
Right.
And so I would sometimes kind of feel eyes on the back of my head, but I recognized that it wasn't maybe so much in this dimension or in my home, but immediately outside. And so I began closing my eyes and trying to look like, well, where are you? And I think the idea of using our non-physical awareness to remote view or astral project might be kind of far out for some people, but that was arguably maybe one of the earliest lessons I received, was navigating that realm.
So you didn't have no interaction with them in the room. They were just there, when they would appear in the room.
So when...
Well, other than the tapping, I know.
Yeah, I'd feel the tapping, and then I would try to close my eyes and see what was going on. There was instances where I would have my eyes closed, I would open them, and it was almost as if on the wall I would see an outline of them. And I remember thinking, like, that's, interesting. But I remember one time there was this individual who I was seeing a lot, and he kind of had like this glowing blue skin. It wasn't so much glowing, but it was like this hue of blue, kind of white. And I remember I would see him kind of standing behind the wall, and I would feel the tapping, and I remember one time putting my hand on the wall, and I remember kind of feeling not so much his hand on the other side of the wall, but it felt like electricity. Like it felt like not putting my finger in a socket, but this kind of buzzing, vibrating sensation that I felt in response to this. And I remember thinking, like, that's weird.
Yeah, that is strange.
And so they would, appear in various forms. Some were shorter, some were taller, and they would be in my room, and I would just wake up during, these experiences. And sometimes the things I was able to observe were somewhat alarming or strange or kind of startling. But what I understood was that humans in these programs are stress tested to make sure that they can handle what's occurring.
Right.
And that, those unwilling or unable to integrate are not permitted further in the program.
Right.
And so if you can't kind of keep your cool, then, you're kind of let go. Yeah. They don't want people freaking out, but I think it can be traumatizing for some people. And it could be hard for them to integrate into their daily life, their daily reality, though there's this other component to it. And so I think that's part of it. And so, experiences continue to occur. I remember telling the people around me, and they're just like, we think you're crazy. Great. Like, not really sure what to do with that information that I would share with them. But eventually I woke up with a mark along my spine. And I was looking at a microscope. I was looking through a microscope at the time. And I remember my neck was sore, and I was like, oh, maybe I've just been like kind of looking down for too long. I remember touching the back of my neck, and there was this line. It was about 1 inch in length across horizontally my spine on my neck. And I remember feeling a bump to the left of it and being like, what is that? It doesn't feel like bone because my spine was to the right of it. This bump was to the left of it, kind of in the muscle. I remember going home and having my roommate, I remember finding one of them, be like, hey, take a photo of my neck. Like, pulling out my hair, like, just take a photo of my neck. And they're like, okay, took a photo of it. And I have the photo. I posted those photos online, and I have copies of those photos that I've saved.
Is it still there, or did it go away?
So the mark has gone away. There's no scarring. From what I've understood, the implant has essentially merged with my body.
Yeah, absorbed.
And so I had multiple people feel the bump, and it kind of felt like just kind of something protruding out from my body. I had my acupuncturist poke it. She was able to get it, and I remember that night going to bed and kind of, wondering what this thing was. I was being like, this is weird. And I remember poking it a lot. I remember the area got hot. It felt irritated. And a loud voice in my head said, stop. And I remember, that was one of the first times where that had happened, where it was obviously not me thinking that, and something was speaking to me. And in defiance. I was like, no, like, who are you to tell me what to do? And I'm gonna, do like keep
it's my
poking
body.
It. Yeah, if it's bugging you, then like I'm gonna keep doing it. And I remember at this time my room, it shifted colors. It was like this blue, this icy blue kind of color, and the entire room almost felt like it kind of rotated and it shifted to this transparent blue. It then felt like I was being sucked out of my body. I was laying in bed, sucked out of my body, and I remember closing my eyes and seeing this like black tube and being like, I'm not going in that, whatever that is. And it was like this very uncomfortable pulling sensation, and it didn't feel like I was clinging to the bed. It felt like I was clinging to my body.
Oh, wow.
And at this point in time, it pulled. I remember it pulled like hard, and it was like 1, 2, 3, and then it stopped. And again, 1, 2, 3, stop. And it happened a third time, and I just said like, okay, I'll stop touching it. Like, you just stop whatever you're doing. And it like kind of like calmed down. The room almost like shifted back to its normal color, and then I fell asleep. And that night, I remember seeing this extraterrestrial. It was a dark brown, kind of purple color. It wasn't a gray. And he indicated to me that we're gonna have to check the implant in case something happened. We need to make sure it's okay. And so I'm sitting kind of upright in a chair, and I see this individual. They have some kind of control panel in front of them. They move something, and I see these horizontal white bars move up the screen. As they move up, they become thinner, and I just understood that they were checking like the frequency or something of this device. And the lights made it all the way to the top screen. Everything. He kind of turned around and was like, everything's fine. You're good to go. And I remember being shown a picture of the implant, and it was. I wouldn't say I was out of body, but it was just kind of like there was no visual. I was in a space with no corners, no ceiling, but it was just white. But I saw this kind of spherical object with all these little hairs on it, like a paintbrush, like all these bristles, and I saw them growing outward, and I understood that the implant was growing into me, and I thought like, okay, and so that was interesting. There was other instances of waking up with other marks on my body. I would take photos of them when I could, or I would try to find them. I would wake up, and try to see if anything was left. But it almost looked like very thin, like hairs or almost like what's it called? Fiber optics or some kind of very thin wire or cable was being inserted in through the pores.
Oh, wow.
Because I would wake up and the pores would be kind of like in these formations, and I don't have allergic reactions to things. I don't wake up with those marks. And I'll take photos of them and try to document them. Around this time, I remember, feeling my neck and trying to ask these individuals, like, what's this for? Why is this here? And the phrase that came through very loudly was track.
Wow.
And
track you.
Yeah, and so from my understanding, they appear to be able to track physiological things like heart rate, but they also able to track, I think, mental states.
Oh, wow.
And states of consciousness as well as physical location. I remember camping in the desert, and during this period, around 2016, 2017, and I remember going out there. It was kind of pretty remote area, and I remember thinking, I wonder if they'll be able to find me. And I remember that night being in my tent, and I couldn't tell if it felt like a signal went away from my body, like something was emitted from my neck, or something came to my neck. Yeah. But it felt almost like a signal either entered or left. And then I remember seeing just like this glowing tube, and being like, well, I guess you found me.
Nice.
And and so I just tried keeping track of everything I could remember. There was a lot of settings of being in classrooms, of being taught various things or being tested. And so the technology that we would interact with varied. A lot of the times it was telepathic or non-physical, the technology. Or it would somehow almost like interact with gravity in a way where it would allow us to move across large distances without needing to walk, and it would almost like two magnets like pulling each other together.
Right.
And you just had to kind of hold on to a tether point to be taken to where you were aiming. I think there was other instances of I think just trying to gauge our ability to maneuver within maybe a less physical dimension.
Right. It's fascinating.
There was I recently tried doing regression hypnosis with, I think, Laurie McDonald.
Right. Yeah. Just wanted to move on.
Yeah, I went to go see her because she's in the area, and
do they charge for that, or do they?
Yep. I think $250.
Really. We've got one here in Old Fair Oaks. He's 800. He's like 800.
Wow.
And I witnessed a regression with a coworker who was on a ship. He regressed, and he was on a island and on a translucent, and you could hear him just talk. I mean, the guy didn't guide him or anything. He was just saying what he was experiencing. It was fascinating.
Yeah, I definitely want to try to do more regression. The one regression experience that I worked on when I went to go see this individual, I think it was in December of last year, so a few months ago. It was a classroom setting, and the memory I had of the experience was that I was on a spaceship, and I was in this classroom with all these kids, and I'm sitting in the back, and I'm kind of taller than them, because at the time, I wasn't a child, and I remember thinking, like, why am I in this room with all these kids? Like, was I held back, or, I was being concerned that I was dumb, or, like, why am I here with, what went wrong? And, I remember the teacher, she looked human, the kids looked human, but during the regression hypnosis, it was shown to me that these weren't children, but they were just short extraterrestrials.
Oh, wow.
And so when I walked around the room, I was able to move around the room, and I recognized, like, oh, these aren't humans. These aren't even humans. These are extraterrestrials.
Wow.
And, yeah, I remember kind of what we were being taught in this instance, but the idea being that people have, like, an energetic bubble, and that we influence them physically or non-physically. Even when, you could bring it back to if someone's in a bad mood, you don't want to be around them, or if they're in a good mood, you do.
Right.
But on a maybe a different level, and that people are picked to kind of hold these fields for the people around them, or for their city, or for their part of the planet, essentially.
Right.
There was another instance where I was in a classroom with other people, and the phrase that was just, like, said very loudly and clearly was top 40. And it seemed like people were selected to be a part of this program. And what else? Yeah, there was just a lot of different experiences, and
eventually it kind of tapered off. I mean,
yeah, so eventually they changed. I felt overwhelmed with these experiences. At the time, it was overwhelming to be trying to go to bed, and someone shows up and kind of be like, are you ready for work? Or, are you are you, like, ready to hit the road? And so I, at the time, tried pushing these experiences away. I wanted to disconnect. I honestly didn't want anything to do with it, because it was stressful. It was interrupting my sleep. I was afraid to go to sleep, so I'd stay up all night, try to prevent it from occurring, and it kind of just felt unavoidable. I would see other beings as well during these experiences. I would see either reptilians. People talk about Arcturians.
Yeah.
The group I most interacted with were Syrians. but grays as well. And there's so many different types of grays. Some were biomechanical and some were independent species. Yeah. I've only been able to interact with one hive mind that I understood to be a hive mind. And it's interesting because at least the hive mind stands out because they're able to communicate telepathically and have, to a certain extent, a sense of consciousness or identity, but it's not... it appears that doesn't exist after death.
Okay.
Despite it being non-physical, there's definitely some gray areas and things that I think still can be understood further. All sorts of different beings. I didn't include it at the MUFON meeting, but there was one individual who was kind of short individual. They had green skin, but they had kind of like a beak, almost like a bird. And I remember that night before falling asleep looking at crop circles and just be like, what's up with all these crop circles? What are they trying to communicate? And I remember falling asleep and I see this individual, my eyes are closed and I see this individual and his mouth, his beak is like talking, but I can't hear him. I hear almost static and he's talking like almost like quickly and I'm like, I can't hear anything. And I hear like a loud snapping. Almost like when you slap a vegetable or snap a vegetable, like this crunch. And then I'm in this space and I see this kind of wave. There's this wave like moving across the space. And it's not a liquid, it's not a solid, but it's this wave. And this individual is now talking to me. And he indicated that time in our dimension, in 3D reality, is experienced as a point. And so right now, our now is only this point. And it's just a point in time, it's a point in space. That's in 3D reality. But when we move to the fourth dimensional reality, that point becomes a line. And so it can give the impression that you can move through time and kind of understand the past, but also give the impression of predicting the future. And so when you move into the fifth dimension, that line becomes a three-dimensional surface. It's no longer a line. It has a plane. And this extraterrestrial is communicating that these extraterrestrials, when they come from these different dimensions, the reason they at times are able to predict things or provide predictions of the future is that their perception of time isn't limited to a point like we have as now, but as an entire plane that they can look across and look throughout. And so when we think of multiple timelines or different outcomes, it's in those other spaces that alternate timelines or quantum possibilities are able to be observed. And I remember thinking, like...
That's interesting.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah. But yeah, it was a little short
individual. Guy with a beak.
Yeah. And he didn't really have scales, but it looked almost like... Yeah, I don't know. There was definitely some texture on his skin. And I remember seeing him a few nights later, but I couldn't hear anything. And this time, what I was observing, it was black and white. He was black and white. He no longer had color.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, I haven't seen him since. And so I would argue that there's probably an endless diversity of life.
Yeah. Sounds like it.
How are we on time?
We're good. We're about to wrap it up in about 5 minutes.
Okay. Trying to... What else I can say? But over time...
Let me know if you can wind it. If you wind it down, that's okay.
Okay. Trying to think.
It sounds like an interesting journey, Homar.
Yeah, it's tough to try to compress.
Yeah, it's a lot of information. So when did it stop? When you pushed it away, is everything stopped now? No contact?
No, I mean contact continues to occur. Except now it's just psychic in nature. If they need to send a message, they can send it, and if I want to communicate, I can.
Yeah.
And so I've been channeling, and I've been connecting in that regard. And
you have a relationship. You have a girlfriend. What does she think about this?
Well, she's actually had her own extraterrestrial experiences. Growing
really?
up, she would have these large beings show up in her home. And she said one was short, about 4 or 5 feet tall. The other one was like 6 or 7 feet tall. And that they would appear in her home and frequently.
Wow.
But she doesn't really have consistent contact now.
Yeah, she doesn't have like you do.
Yeah, and she wasn't really maybe as curious or adventurous as I was to go out and continually engage.
Or do you continue to document everything to this date?
Yeah, I do. I try to because sometimes it's just maybe a quick, almost like a quick glance, or it's not something as a
whole experience.
Yeah.
Just a very limited exposure.
One experience I've been thinking about that I want to try to do a regression on is I woke up I was in a hospital, and I looked at a calendar in the hospital and I recognized that I was in the hospital for a month, but I didn't remember any of it.
Oh,
and I remember asking some individuals there, like, why am I missing a month? Like, what happened? And they wouldn't look at me, and they kind of just ignored me and kind of left the room.
Oh, wow.
And so a question that, like talking more about these things and kind of having memories come back to me, it's been interesting. Even last week I had a memory come back to me that I hadn't had before, and I recognized kind of like a procedure being performed on me, and that it was more stressful, but I understood that some of the more stressful experiences are kind of repressed or cloaked either by extraterrestrials or by humans, because if they're too stressful, people don't want to continue doing the work. People are apprehensive to continue moving forward. But one message I channeled recently I can share. This was last week as well. Because the nature of the experiences has changed. But recognize that reality must change. Daily life is intended for planet occupants to have their basic needs met freely without suffering. There is a deliberate barrier to technological advancement on the planet, which would make life easier for all, and evolution at this point should be consciousness-based. Civilians who are experiencing or are able to deliberately experience non-human intelligence, extraterrestrials, or interdimensional beings are a danger and threat to those who wish to control the narrative, because who they communicate with is varied and may go against their desires. Threat to security includes the gifting and exchange of technology, which could be superior. As a result, uncontrolled contact is considered dangerous. Contact threatens the structured greed on the planet. Disclosure occurs within the mind when consciousness finally reaches out to touch the hand that's always been there. Disclosure has occurred and continues to occur, and at this point is reassurance for those with doubts. Rather than waiting for acknowledgement, the emphasis needs to shift towards initiating direct contact through the growth and evolution of personal psychic abilities. Evolution, growth, and expansion are not contingent on beings in power providing disclosure and acknowledgement. The unification of this movement must not rely on reassurance from others, or agreed upon mechanics or intentions of beings, but personal conviction and confidence that the individual has all they need to be considered dangerous and a threat to those in power, which is their very own consciousness. Humans need to bridge the gap to receive the necessary information or downloads for the next evolutionary wave.
Wow. They conveyed that verbally to you?
Yeah, you just kind of meditate and start writing.
No, that's crazy. That's quite a message. I don't know, man. All right, well, at this point, I think we're going to wrap it up. I appreciate you coming on, telling your story. It's fascinating. I'm glad you put it out there. I'm glad it's brave to be able to, express these kinds of things. But I don't think it's, anymore, we were talking about before we started, is, people are more open to the possibility that these things are happening. I'm hoping it doesn't affect you negatively. I'm hoping that was a great message. and please continue to do that. Bring to us anything new, that you might run across. That'd be great.
Yeah,
maybe we can do this again in another year or so.
Okay.
6 months, see, if you've got enough to compile enough and continue the story, because I think it's going somewhere. It feels like it's going somewhere. I don't know.
Yeah, it's definitely going somewhere. I'm not sure where, but I guess we'll see.
All right, Omar. Well, we're going to go ahead and wrap it up, if I can find my cursor. And thanks for listening to the latest episode of the Alien Probe Podcast. Omar, thank you. And we'll see you again at some point.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks for listening to the latest episode of the Alien Probe Podcast. We welcome comments, questions, or guest requests to alienprobepodcast@gmail.com. Visit us on Facebook. Listen to us wherever you get your favorite podcasts. Twitter and Instagram at Alien Probe Pod. YouTube and Rumble at Alien Probe Podcast. We also have a paid version on Patreon if you'd like to show your support. However, the content is free on all other platforms.